I'm ready. It always does. And I am ready. I got it, YouTube. Greetings, everyone. This is Todd Pitner with Decentralized Directory. And let me make sure this isn't going to blow me out here. Nope, it's on mute. So we're good. Hey, everyone. It is October 9th. And what a crazy beginning of the month this has been. And I cannot wait to pick the mind of the man, the myth, the legend, Andy Schectman. He is founder, CEO of Miles Kimball, mileskimball.com.
No, Miles Franklin.
Oh, Miles Kimball, man. I had my, when I got out of college, my largest catalog account was Miles Kimball. So I'm so sorry. Miles Franklin, my bad, if I didn't live stream, I could clean that stuff up. I could do the Mike Adams thing and go and whistle and cut it out. But we live stream, you get the good, the bad, and the ugly. So milesfranklin.com. You want to go there, write it down, and also write this phone number down, 952-929-7006. And the reason why I'm going to share that with you is for those of you who might have to run or may not have a long attention span, you want to be able to have that phone number to call or write down info@milesfranklin.com. And if you do an outreach and you want to be able to make the smart move this day and age of being able to acquire precious metals, Mike has been kind enough for anybody who calls 952-929-7006 or emails his team info@milesfranklin.com, you can get a 10% off of your initial order. And I have to share with you, Andy, I was doing a show with Mike Adams on Thursday, and I had shared that information, and he was like, whoa, that's generous. He goes, I've ordered from Andy before. Do I qualify for that too? So what do you say, Andy? Should we tell him?
Absolutely. Well, Mike's been very good to me, and so have you. And it's, look, it's a way to show appreciation. And we do appreciate very much the trust that both you and Mike have put in, and myself and in Miles Franklin. And we do our very best, not only to treat your clients right, but to show you guys our appreciation, both in the savings, but also in the way that we conduct business. And hopefully the fact that no one ever calls and complains about the way that they were treated. That's something we're very, very serious about. And I do like the outreach. I do like the phone calls. I do like people contacting us and building a relationship, because honestly, I think where we're heading, relationships will never mean more. And I guess you don't realize how important a relationship is until there's a problem.
Right.
And in 33 years, we've never had a customer complaint. Doesn't mean we haven't had problems. We just address them immediately and make them right. But I can assure you, Todd and Mike, if you're listening, that your listeners will not be the first complaint that we've ever had. I'll make damn sure of that. And so I do like the outreach. I think it's a good way to establish a relationship and to get questions answered the proper way.
Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate it, Andy, because we preach the fact that people need to get their money out of the banks, or be sorry, ultimately, and get them into precious metals, private crypto, gold, silver. I'm a big fan of, even making an investment in your backyard or property with a food forest, trying to beat food inflation in the coming years. So precious metals is a huge, huge part of that.
Well, you can bury your gold and silver in your garden, become a midnight gardener if you're looking for a place to store things too, and kill two birds with one stone.
Good point. Good point. So share with me, Mike. It's been a while since you've been a road warrior and have been traveling, and it's been a crazy schedule that you've had. But share with me, if you wouldn't mind. This is intended to be kind of a weekly market update. And this last week, with everything going on in Israel, Uh, I just want to hear what you have to say, Mike. What's going on, and how's it affecting precious metals, in your opinion?
You know, the world is spinning out of control. There's no question about it. I mean, look at the things that are happening all at the same time. You have the Speaker of the House removed for the first time in history. Of course, you have the war breaking out between Israel and the Palestinians. You have mortgage interest rates hitting all-time, or the highest level rather, in the last 23-4 years.
Yeah.
Of course, we had the Hawaiian wildfires burn 17,000 acres of land. We have OPEC that is issuing surprise voluntary production cuts. You have oil almost $100 a barrel. You have $17.1 trillion in household debt, 12 trillion. These are all records, record 17 trillion in household debt, record 12 trillion in mortgages, record 1.6 trillion in auto loans. How about record 1.6 trillion in the largest asset of the United States government? As pathetic as that is, that's student debt. They call that the largest asset of the US government, and a record 1 trillion in credit card debt. And so you put all of this together, these things are spinning out of control.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing. And at the same time, you have the People's Bank of China, who purchased just under 900,000 ounces of gold in August, increasing its holdings for the 11th straight month consecutively. And even more shocking than that, you have gold Monday morning today opening up in China on the Shanghai Gold Exchange at $112 an ounce more than it is here in the West, either in London or in the United States. And that sucking sound you hear, if you listen closely, that sucking sound you hear is gold and silver being sucked out of the Western vaults, arbitraging to the East in a manner that, look, you got traders that will arbitrage out of 50 cents on certain things, let alone $112 difference. It's the second highest discrepancy that we've ever seen. So
wow,
it's a very, very big deal.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So how is it with all of this acquisition by China and other countries as well? Why don't we see gold like double in price?
Oh, that's a good question. It's because there are just a handful of commercial banks that are suppressing the paper price, holding it down. And this is exactly what the banks around the world are playing into. They are using the suppression of the Western gold markets to create or to foster this illusion of strength in dollar and strength in the Western system. They are using that environment to drain the coffers, to drain the exchanges. By holding the paper price down, they are misdirecting the public with rhetoric and price. Price is the greatest tool of misdirection. And if you realize that the COMEX market roughly works on about a 35 times leverage, if a bank like JP Morgan has $500 million in their margin account, they can control north of 15 billion in notional gold derivatives or futures contracts. So if you hold the paper price down by selling short into the market with vengeance, because not only are you some of the wealthiest traders on the globe, it certainly appears like you have kind of the wink of the Western elite, the governments who say, go ahead, we want you to do our bidding. We want you to keep the price of gold and silver down, because after all, gold and silver aren't just commodities. They are the kryptonite to the Western system. They expose the frailty of the system. So a bank like JP Morgan, or a sovereign entity, maybe a sovereign wealth fund on behalf of the Chinese government, they sell short into the paper market and buy up the physicals around the globe at pennies on the dollar. Well, not in China, though, because it's $115 an ounce higher than it is in the West. And so what they're doing is they're trying to gobble up all of the physicals slowly and methodically, not too fast to cut off their nose to spite their face, but continuing to play this charade of make-believe on the COMEX market, not just in gold and silver. You're seeing a bleed down in all the strategic metals. The London Metals Exchange lost 95% of their zinc and 75% of their aluminum last year alone. So you have big traders around the globe who understand we are moving into a period of time that will be dominated by commodities and not by debt instruments and promises and IOUs. And the big money around the world who understands where we are going are using the suppression of the leveraged futures markets of the West to not only suppress the paper price, but to misdirect the masses, which allows them to stand for delivery at subsidized prices. And this will continue to happen until there just isn't anyone stupid enough to sell their product, which is proof of work. And that's what these commodities are. They're proof of work. You had to dig it out of the ground and refine it and bring it to a place where it can be listed on the market.
Right.
It's not a promise. It's not a debt instrument, but we'll take that proof. Thank you very much. As the rest of the world is saying, at these make-believe prices, we'll beat you at your own game. And that's what they're doing. They're playing the paper game by suppressing the paper price and then accumulating everything that's not nailed down. And that's why you see shortages at the top. There's great availability and low premiums down here right now. But that'll change, because if the big industrial size gold and silver bars are being delivered off the exchanges, and guys like Ted Butler say it's a massive shortage at that level, the trickle down effect is not far away. And maybe it's an event like this war in Israel that will light the fuse. Don't know, but I will tell you that when you see the central banks buying at such a voracious pace, when you see gold at $115 higher in China than it is in London or the United States, when you see central banks increasing month over month over month over month, it's just a matter of time. And that's why I find it so ironic that at a period of time when availability should be poor, premium should be high, it's the inverse of that. It's the best availability and the lowest premiums we've seen in over 3 years, and yet the world is getting, in my opinion, far more complicated and far more frightening. And maybe that's exactly why the central banks are suppressing the paper price, yet accumulating the physical. After all, what did the Bank of International Settlements say in April of 2019 to the central banks and to the world, if you were listening? And that is, oh, by the way, gold, we're going to levy up to the only other tier one reserve asset in the world. So you have US dollars and treasuries. It's been that way since the end of World War II. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to call gold the only other tier one asset as far as central banks are concerned, a riskless asset. And maybe that's why they've all not only been accumulating the hell out of it, but repatriating it, taking possession of it back from the Bank of England and the New York Fed at a massive pace. So there's a term I've become very fond of. It's called logarithmic decay. Little by little by little by little by little, then all at once. It's like going over the falls. Where are we? It's the game of Jenga. Where are we in this pathway, this progression of events before we hit the falls? This little by little by little by little, then bang, we wake up on a Sunday night and China has the price of gold at $500 an ounce more than the West, and silver at $50 or $80 or $100. And bang, like that, everything that is not nailed down across the globe immediately goes to that arbitrage.
Right.
And we wake up with nothing left. And there's an old saying, Todd, and that is, he who has the gold makes the rules. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think that's where we're heading in a situation where the world is accumulating what we're stupid enough to sell at subsidized prices.
That's amazing. So help me out, Andy. By the way, Monkman, the gentleman who makes our thumbnails, he's awesome. He's in the chat. What up, Monkman? Good to see you. So, Andy, let's just kind of take it down to a different level. You know, you're talking the macro, but let's talk about just normal folks. I'm going to say normal folks like me, you know, that might have some investable cash, or maybe people who are just need the dollar cost average. But what is your counsel on acquiring gold? And please tell us why. Why must we?
Well, I make the why very succinct. And I think most people haven't noticed this, but in the past 18 days,
Mhm.
The US national debt has gone up $444 billion in 18 days. At that pace, it would be an 11 trillion per year deficit added to the national debt. It took the United States until March of 1975 to accumulate 500 billion, and we just did that in the last 18 days. Since we
Crazy.
raised the debt ceiling, we have accumulated roughly 2 trillion in debt since we have raised the debt ceiling. It took us over 210 years to do that. So the value of the dollar, the more they print, the less the value of each dollar in circulation is worth.
Right.
And so you print more and more and more and more, and the dollar becomes worth less and less and less and less. And that's the reason to get out of the way of the dollar and its massive printing,
Yeah.
which will never end.
Right.
Look, we have a 32 trillion, $33 trillion debt, but we have 130 trillion in unfunded liabilities that aren't counted in the debt. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. We have 155 trillion in debt with only 5 trillion in assets. That's according to the US government. The biggest asset, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 trillion, 40+% of our asset base is student debt. There's your why. A trillion seconds ago, 31,688 years ago. There's your why in terms of what? Look, there's about 15 states, Alaska, Idaho, Missouri, Texas, Utah, Nevada, North Carolina, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas. The list goes on, that are approving legal tender gold and silver coins minted by a sovereign government. Some just say US mint, some say any government mint, past or present, can be used for all debts, public and private, including paying your property taxes. For me, the what is, if I had a choice, I'm buying American Eagle gold and silver.
Okay.
And I think that is, at least by half of the states in this country, considered to be money now. And the way the law reads is it says the melt value of the coin plus any market premium. So at some point, people will become keenly aware of the market premium. But look, this is, thank God for these states, a little bit of a pushback against the changes that are being forced down our throat, like a central bank digital currency, and which is coming by 2025. And
sure it is.
That's what the BIS, Bank of International Settlements, mandates. Everyone has to have one by 2025. So gold and silver are assets that are not simultaneously someone else's liability. They have no counterparty risk. And in a period of time where the stress on the system is growing by the day, counterparty risk will become a very nasty buzzword.
Right.
And I think the why, that's why removing counterparty risk, becoming a midnight gardener, burying it in your backyard, being your own bank, being your own IRA, being your own annuity, and not relying upon a system that is over leveraged, is undercapitalized, it is extended way too far and approaching the end game. So for me, you make it very simple. You buy 1 ounce gold eagles, you buy 1 ounce silver eagles. If you want some fractional gold eagles, fine. They come in half, quarter, and 10th ounce. Make it simple. And you will have the most sought after liquid gold and silver coins in North America that have immediate non-subjective liquidity wherever you are. And in where we're going, to me, Todd, that's the best you can ask for.
Yeah. You know, so what percentage then would you suggest if somebody's just getting into it? Or let's say somebody has $10,000 of that they've saved, that's cash, and they're hearing the message that that's melting and you don't know when there may be a bail in, but the fact is it's losing value, daily. Through inflation, especially food inflation, if you take a good look at that. Goodness. So what percentage then would you suggest out of that $10,000, would you suggest someone put into silver versus gold? Somebody had given me the counsel about 3 years ago that I should consider the little lipstick containers of the 10th ounce gold. And so my wife and I, we acquired a fair bit of that. And the notion was that when it hits the fan, that you may not be able to, or buying something of lower value, somebody might not be able to give you change for a gold silver eagle. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the silver eagle here is going to be, in my opinion, the best way to trade. The 1/10 ounce gold eagle is my favorite, actually my number one favorite gold bullion item. They trade at higher premiums, however, both buy and sell. The mint doesn't make very many of them, and they sell them at a much lower premium. But the bottom line is that, I think you ask yourself, first of all, let's make one declaration. To me, gold and silver are wealth. They are not an investment. They've outlived 2 world wars, German hyperinflation, the Great Depression, every pandemic, and anything and everything the world has ever thrown at it. When I accumulate gold and silver, I've been doing it every 2 weeks for 33 years. That was the promise I made to my dad when we started our company. You'll buy something every 2 weeks. That's the only rule. Cool, I said. Well, that was 33 years ago. It was the best gift he ever gave me.
Yes.
Taught me how to use the laws of compounding for me instead of against me. So I look at gold and silver as wealth, first and foremost, not as an investment, but I would work backwards. What exposure do you want to a system that is 155 trillion in debt by the government's own admission, with only 5 trillion in assets, the largest asset, 40%, being the debt of our children? You strip that out, we have 3.5 trillion in assets being land and military primarily, against 155 trillion in debt as rates are rising. And I believe you made a comment, most people don't even know what a bail-in is, but bail-ins were written into law in 2009. And that's why there was such outrage when Silicon Valley and Signature Bank were bailed out by the FDIC, who said, well, it was too systemic, it would have brought the system down. But that's the point. It was made illegal to do that. And that's why Janet Yellen said, well, this will not be at the expense of the taxpayer. Yeah, bullshit. It's going to be, or by inflation. That money had to be created somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And so it is at all of our expense. The bottom line is this. I'd work backwards. What exposure do you want to a bankrupt, insolvent system? You go back throughout history, there's a Rubicon. If you cross 130% debt to GDP, you never come back. In history, no one ever has. It has always precipitated a default either by massive inflation like Zimbabwe or Weimar Republic, or a flat out default saying, see ya, we give up, we're done, we're starting over. Some form of a default, and we are at 130% debt to GDP. We are a banana republic.
Yeah.
So, could some of this stuff be done by design to create a reset, to make people ask for the CBDC when everything blows up, when the banking system is massively undercapitalized and over leveraged, holding toxic assets that as rates go up, it continues to erode the banks. And when the next bank fails, that creates a bail-in. And people like, what the hell? They just took all of our, do you see John down the street? He's got 5 insurance agencies and he's got $4 million in operating capital. It's gone like that. Boom, bye-bye, bailed in. That is the law. And if you don't believe me, people out there, just Google the Dodd-Frank law that was put into effect in 2009 and Google bail-ins. Or how about the $1 trillion that has moved into money market accounts? The same time they did the bail-ins, they did money market gating legislation, because when Lehman Brothers failed, they held lots of the money market funds and everyone tried to yank their money out. It's called breaking the buck. The money markets went upside down. No, can't do that ever again. They make gating legislation, meaning too bad, you must stay in the sinking ship. The point of it is not how much gold and silver should you own, but rather what exposure do you want to a dying system, a dying currency, and a historical example of once you get to where we are now, there is no return without default. And so I want people to understand it's not about how much gold and silver should you own. It's about what exposure do you want to a system in its last stages as it's gasping for air, and work backwards from there.
I don't want any. I mean, I want to keep it as thin as possible. And the sad thing is, and this really, I can really feel this. I have 4 daughters and, they work very hard. And I have one who's just genuinely, almost sadly, so frustrated because incomes aren't keeping up with inflation, right? And it won't. I mean, I don't foresee, maybe you know something I don't know, but I don't foresee in the near future that all of a sudden people are going to start getting these meaningful raises that'll help them keep up with inflation. Just don't see that out there from an employer's standpoint.
Well, not only that, it's a lie. The BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they ought to just remove the L and call it the BS, because I'll give you an example. And to your point, the US economy is a lie, right? All the headlines that we read in the jobs reports that just came out show that we added 336,000 jobs in September. Woo. But over the last 3 months, full-time employment in the United States is down 692,000.
Yeah.
So you have, over that period of time, 1.2 million part-time jobs, but we lost 692,000 full-time jobs. So benefits and pay are not commensurate with the increase in the cost of living.
No.
And when you have a government that lies about the CPI, they exclude things like food and energy and housing in the CPI measurements. Right. So the CPI should be called the CP lie. There's a guy named John Williams of shadowstats.com, and all he does is show the way that we used to calculate the numbers before they continued to adjust them to fit their inflationary agenda. And he would tell you that unemployment is 2 to 3 times what it is right now, and inflation is probably 2 to 3 times what it is right now as well. It's not the low rate that they're telling us. It's much, much higher, maybe as high as 10, 11, 12%. And then at the very same time, you have a think tank at the United Nations come out and say, if the governments don't stop this 2% inflation mantra and raise it to what is acceptable, they'll blow up the whole system. But my question to the UN is, when did we think that 2% inflation was something to strive for? How about negative 2%? Because the lower the rate of inflation, the higher the standard of living. Well, here you have the UN saying, well, you better go to 3 or 4%, what we strive for, in order to not blow up the system. And pretty soon that will be 5 or 7 or 10 or 12. This is a situation where once you mess with the laws of Mother Nature, you suppress interest rates and flood the world with money, the asset prices reach levels that are distorted. And you have all of these anomalies in asset prices that were created through easy money and suppressed interest rates. When you try to normalize things, the pain becomes very, very severe. And there really isn't a way back without going through that pain. And every time we've got to that point where we should have let Mother Nature burn down the forest and start over again, we just papered it over. And in 2008, if they just would have let the forest burn down, let the weak players fail, let the banks that made stupid bets fail, and let the law of capitalism, where the strong survive and are replacing the poor and the companies that are inefficient, we'd be well on our way to recovery. Instead, we papered it over and vilify capitalism, which is the wrong thing altogether. So we are in a place right now where I don't think we get to where we're going without going through a substantial amount of pain first.
And Andy, so you started your company in 1990, right?
Yep.
So that's 33 years, and everybody should know you're coming up on a huge benchmark. I don't know when, whether it's a year or years or whatever, but you've sold $9 billion in precious metals, which is just astonishing over those 33 years. So congratulations on that. And I can't wait to be at the party when you hit 10 billion. That'll be funny. But my question is this: over those 33 years, Andy, when do you think the quality of living was best? I know we could go back further and people could say the 1950s or early 70s, but in your 33 years of running your company, when do you think it was just like, man, those were the good old days?
Well, I think you could say really any time from 1990 forward. You had the dot-com bust, but here again, that was bailed out just like the 87 was bailed out and papered over. But I think when you talk about prosperity, when you talk about safety, look at the things that have happened over the last several years. You have a breakdown in lawlessness.
Yes.
You have a breakdown in the judicial system. You have all of these things that are rapidly changing the fabric of this country. I come from a home where my parents were hippies. I come from a home where you respected people no matter what their differences were.
Right.
But you didn't have to, it wasn't something that had to dominate the narrative, like transgenderism, like cancel culture, like censorship. These things that are popping up out of nowhere, first of all, never were part of the fabric, and now they're in your face. And I would say that what we are seeing is an erosion of the nuclear family, an erosion of respect for authority, an erosion in liberty and justice, and that's what this country stands for. It's an erosion in the whole system. And I think so, for me, I would say from 1990 to probably 2010 or thereabouts.
Wow. I was going to say 2008. That was my number. I agree with you that everything about that time span, it just felt like prosperity, like you could work harder, you could earn more, you'd be acknowledged for it. There was this feeling of safety. There were so many good jobs that are out there that you could actually negotiate with your employer to get a better, salary or whatever, or you have decisions, you have alternatives, right? And then 2008 hit, and I associated all. It's like, I voted for him for the first time, but certainly not the second time. But I thought Obama was a breath of fresh air, and as it turned out, that to me was the beginning of the end. I mean, it's like what he and his administration marched in. That's when it all turned in my mind.
That's when the divisiveness happened, where you were, from that point forward, you were defined by who you voted for in the previous election. And from that point forward, it became very contentious. It used to be a country where we thrived on debate, in a cordial debate. And now it's so visceral and anger on either side that they used to say that the right side was radical. To me, what we've seen from the left side is equally as radical, and that's why I think both parties stink. This is more a comment on patriotism and on being an American. And the worst part about it is the lack of unity. After World War II and the Great Depression, we were a united country, and we respected authority. We respected the nuclear family. We worked hard. We saved. We believed in God. We did the things that you could argue made this country united and strong. Even if you had differences of opinion, we were united in so many ways, in so many aspects, that we could have a cordial debate. And now there is such divisiveness in things like the nuclear family, in things like gender, in things like just the narrative that we see shoved down our throat all over the place. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but to say divide and conquer, I mean, isn't that part of the Communist Manifesto? And we are 100%. Very divided. We are very divisive. We are not united. That to me is the biggest and most distressing part. You can throw all the economic stuff, on top of it, which makes it much worse. To me, that just means that we're not prepared. Yeah. When our backs are against the wall, we've had a history of rising to the occasion, but we were a united country and a very patriotic one. And now those things are really kind of an era gone by.
The other thing, Andy, is, and I think you'd agree with me, but I believe that we are in a spiritual war, and I believe in demons, and I believe that they've been around from certainly from Genesis 6, and they're pretty good at their jobs, and I just feel that there is like this. Since 2008, almost like there was some kind of seance or something that let them free and let them loose, that spirit of dissension, that you talk about, to where it's just every time you turn around, there was just another reason to be able to assault your I don't know. It's like logic. It's I find people today, I just don't know if they have the ability to be able to think things through like I believe we used to. But it just seems, here it is. It just seems like everybody, or a giant percentage of the populace, is under some kind of spell, and I'm a fan of thinking through the NPC theory, non-player character theory, where I really wonder if some people just get their downloads, their programming from the TV, and spend entirely too much watching the controlled media, which, shout out to Mike Adams and Brighteon and everything that he has done to be able to attack censorship, he being one of the most censored people on this planet. But we've lost our voice. It not completely, but certainly through mainstream television. I mean, shoot, Fox News it's all controlled. It's all controlled media, the narrative. So I wonder, at some point in time, I just think there has to be a Control-Alt-Delete. I've gone through a couple of spells in my life that when I look back, I say, sometimes God brings you to your knees so that you might look up, and I feel like that's where we are as a nation right now, to where we're being brought to our knees so that we might again look up and give credit where credit is due. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, there's no question that we are being brought to our knees. And I think a lot of people feel something's wrong. A lot of people can't articulate. The sad thing is that you can't get out of the way of what you don't see coming. You speak of the media. Every single radio station, newspaper, magazine, television station, they're owned by 4 companies. The information is filtered for sure. And that's why someone like Mike is so courageous to bring truth to the public.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the people that are following the alternative media represent the pimple on the elephant's rear end. And the elephant is really in a bad place, whether it be financially. You get 65% of the country living paycheck to paycheck, 45% of those earning over $100,000 paycheck to paycheck. You have overextension, you have undercapitalization, you have the banks in a horrible place, you have the divisiveness of this country, you have war around the world, you have what amounts to 70 to 80% of human population rallying against the dollar and the Belt Road Initiative, the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union. You have all of these things spinning out of control. At the same time, we have our Speaker of the House for the first time ever kicked out, and divisiveness like you've never seen in both parties, where all you ever hear is Trump did this and Biden is inept, and there's never anything about addressing the problems. We are in that place where there's no question that we are in for some difficult times, and maybe it will take something like that for us to realize we really had a very good thing going. But I'll tell you, the people leading this country should be clinging to the extreme privilege of being the world reserve currency, the beacon of freedom. And it just seems we're doing everything in our power to relinquish that. Now, I've been saying this for a while. Just so happens that the chief economic advisor to the U.S. government is a man named Jared Bernstein, whose main thesis is to lose the dollar's world reserve status. And I said the number 2 person, Lael Brainerd, well, she's a modern monetary theorist and wants to get rid of the banks and go central bank digital currency. And I keep coming back to the point, has this all been orchestrated? Divide the country, create massive disunity, put the banks on edge, have them load up on debt with low interest rates and say, sure, you can do that. We won't raise rates, and then raise rates faster on a steepened, bear curve that is going to crush the banks, and then tell Saudi Arabia by means of executive order, we're going green 50% by 2030, 80% by 2050. hey, we don't need you anymore, which is
That's a nice message.
linchpin of the dollar hegemony. Everything
Right.
we are doing is bringing us to that moment.
Yeah.
Where we will be on our knees looking up. And I'm not excited about it, nor do I tell people to buy gold and silver to become wealthy. I tell them that moment mathematically is coming. And if you don't see it, you're not paying attention. And here again, unless you're following people like Mike or myself or you or other people who've been saying this for quite some time, you can't get out of the way of what you don't see coming. And that to me is very frightening of what things will look like when we reach that logarithmic decay moment, little by little by little. And boom, all at once.
I've always been that nut job who's they deem a prepper, right? To where I actually have a room dedicated in my house that is just literally when it hits the fan, I have water covered, I have fire covered, I have food covered, I have, I invest in a lot of lead. And so I look at this just and differently than I used to. I'll be honest. It's only been the last few years that I have become a financial prepper, meaning get out of the green crappy stuff and get into precious metals. And I'm really glad that I woke up a few years ago to that effect. But let's just help people who are watching or will be watching. By the way, Mike Adams asked if we would mind him rebroadcasting this on Brighteon TV, and
of course not.
And I said absolutely. So that's going to start happening. So this will reach a lot larger audience than just my 4,000 current subscribers. But I want to let everyone know. Write this down: 952-929-7006. That's the phone number that if you want to call and you want to start getting into the rhythm of dollar cost averaging, if you say Todd sent me, then you'll get 10% off your first order. Even if you want to do it by email, info@milesfranklin.com, info@milesfranklin.com. Again, put in the header Todd sent me. And
you'll send, if you do that, that's an important one, because if you do that, we'll send you a price list with much more competitive prices than on our website, which you can only buy up to 10 grand. In certain states, the tax software is being implemented now. It's still not operable on all 50 states. We're getting there quickly, but info@milesfranklin.com with any questions, and also to request a very, very competitive non-public price list. And
can you please share with everyone, you have people who answer those, they've been with you for many case decades. And these are like the white gloves of the white glove handlers, right?
We have an answering service because we get so many calls who will take your number and pass it to, the 14 brokers that we have. Almost every one of them I go back to childhood with. And a lot of them have very distinguished careers before starting with me on Wall Street. One is a graduate of Wharton who has a master's degree in business administration from Temple University. 3 or 4 of them worked on Wall Street as traders. Every single one of them I consider my friend before they worked for me, and like good friends. That's great. Going back to elementary school and Little League. And we are one big family, which that's so cool. I think makes us a little unique. Everyone not only is qualified to speak to you about economics, geopolitical events, what's happening in the world, but also have a very strong vested interest in maintaining quality and integrity, and never being that person that gets that first customer complaint. So right. I think that's one of the things that differentiates us.
Yeah, and everyone, please, and I learned this a lot from Mike. I mean, the margins in precious metals are thin. And so when you're talking about a 10% discount on your first order, that's meaningful. That's very meaningful. And that's why Mike joked and he said, well, I bought from him before. Am I able to take advantage of that? So Mike, yes, you can, as long as you say Todd sent me. Yes. There we go. So by the way, I want to acknowledge, I finally got my Zoom and my YouTube, everything fixed to where I can see people in the chat again. And so it's great to have you. And I want to acknowledge, Andy, there's this young man, his name is Kid Crypto, and he's been doing these these videos, short videos, and publishing them. He's just the most clever kid I've ever met. I mean, you can tell he's just one of those that you just wait, I mean, I don't know if he's 8 years old, maybe 10 years old, in that zone, but he's just been a real pleasure to follow and observe. And so I encourage you, Kid Crypto, you're cool, and I love what you're doing. And I can't wait for you to interview me. Yes, I'd love to come on your show. And so great community over there.
I love that. In fact, I've done that quite a bit. There have been several young men that I have mentored, if you want to call it that, or helped along best I could, paid it forward. I had experiences like that in my career, and I find it very neat that you can exert yourself and become successful while sitting in your living room using YouTube if you can provide a service or a utility. And age is of no barrier, I guess, if you are smart enough and industrious enough and work hard enough to bring value to the public. So I think that's great. And I hope he continues to work hard, and maybe he can interview the both of us at once one time. And
that would be great. And Kid Crypto, you have something that none of the rest of us have, and that is time to compound. So I don't know if you're 8 or 10, let's just say that you're 10, but you start dollar cost averaging into, I know you love you some crypto, but start dollar cost averaging and taking custody of some silver and gold as well. Your dad, Andy, made you promise to buy every 2 weeks, and that's pretty darn cool. So that doesn't mean you have to blow your whole paycheck on it. Dollar cost averaging is just a little consistently every couple of weeks. You do that from the age of 10 to when you get to be old like me. People are going to be, dying trying to find your GPS coordinates to your own backyard.
And more than anything, it's allowing and understanding the laws of compounding, allow it to work for you instead of against you. Most of the people in this country have been fighting compounding interest their whole lives, their whole adult lives. This is a way to get ahead of it and to pay yourself first, which to me is the best advice I could ever give anyone, would be to pay yourself first and to get on a plan of always doing it, no matter what, regimented every 2 weeks or every pay cycle.
So
even if it's a $10 bill in a jar, put something away for yourself every single pay period.
Okay, so I was going to back the bus up a little bit. What do you mean by that? Pay yourself first. Are you meaning that you just need to, you get a paycheck and you need to save some?
If you don't, you'll never get off the wheel. You'll never get out of the rat race. There's always a reason. Well, I'll do it next time. And if you owe $100, but you want to spend 25 on a Silver Eagle and then pay 75 towards your debt, I promise you that the credit card company won't cut you off if you pay $75 out of the 100 you owe. You do the best you can. But if you never pay yourself first, and save, you'll never get ahead. And that is the only way to do it. It's the best advice, the best gift I've ever been given.
Yep.
And I tell everyone who works for me, if you don't buy something every 2 weeks, find another job. And it may sound stupid, for me to say that, but every single person who works for me has said to me, my God, thank you so much. It's unbelievable how much I put away. Yeah. I've been here for 9 years. I can't believe when I look in my safe. And that is the point. Little by little by little by little, you build wealth. And if you don't become regimented, it's just like working out. If you don't work out, you don't ever get in shape. Well, no one ever wants to get up at the crack of dawn and go hit the gym until you start to see the benefits and wow, this is working.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden it becomes part of your daily life. And that's what you want to do with investing as well. Your financial health in many ways is just as important as your physical health. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. And just tell you a quick story. My wife and I both, we have been diligent at paying ourselves, usually by, when we get a paycheck or deposit a paycheck, I might take out $400, $200, right? And I would put them in my safe. and just stack the cash. Now, these days, I would not tell my daughter to stack the cash. I would talk about getting into other assets that will hold their purchasing power, like precious metals. But those $100 bills that I stacked over the years, when I recently made the decision to, take a pretty meaningful deep dive in Florida permaculture and building out a food forest in my back property, I wanted to, it was going to be one of those go big or go home type things, right? But I am passionate about decentralization, and I want to be the tip of the spear, to be able to show people, Andy, to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So when it came time, my wife and I, we came up with a budget, and my wife said, "Why does it have to be that high of a budget?" And I said, "Because I want to feed the neighborhood one day." And but then it hit me. So I just kind of almost forgot about those stacked $100 bills. And so I'm like, you know what? I got the number, Andy, and I'm not kidding you. It was like the amount of money that I had covered the entire food forest plus $400. So I don't even feel like it was totally painless, right? It didn't come out of my savings just because I forgot about it, but that's the, now if it would have had compounding interest in my safe, that would have been great, but that doesn't happen. But it's just the point that, if you do pay yourself, and at some point in time when there is a need, man, I really am encouraging people to really think through, start growing your own food. I mean, I'm totally passionate about it now because I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing the benefits even in me psychologically, right? Having something to care for back there, not to work or toil, because Florida permaculture, they are a self-sustaining system. But if anybody wants to go down in my videos down below, you can kick the tires. I wanted to decentralize from energy inflation. So I went solar. There's a video down there to be able to show you how you could go solar with no out of pocket. It's just an absolute no-brainer. So we have to start thinking about these things. And that's what this show is all about. And Andy, I am so grateful that you've agreed to be my co-host a couple times a month at least, if not weekly.
I'm happy to come every week and be part of what you're doing. I'm a fan of what you and Mike do, and I'm happy to help what you're doing and see this through with you, because we're all pulling the same wagon. And I think the more people that we can help, at least to open their eyes to see what's coming, the better off we'll all be. So it's an honor to be here with you, Todd, and I look forward to coming back as often as you'll have me.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to meeting you in person this week. My wife and I are going down to your neck of the woods, and we're going to hook up with you, have some dinner.
Looking forward to that as well, very much. And look forward to picking up with all of you out there next week, but Todd, with you later on this week.
Okay, great. Hey, everyone in the chat, thank you for coming. It's really exciting to be back. And I'm talking about being back live streaming, where I can see the chat and see the people coming in and engaging. And I hope you're enjoying these shows. We're going to keep bringing them to you. And Kid Crypto, reach out to me. Let's get a time on the schedule for that interview. All right, Andy, thank you so much for everything. This was great. Thank you for the market report. It is October 9th, 2023, and we'll call this a wrap. Thank you, Andy.
See you soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.